I've been doing this paint by numbers, and it is literally all I care about. It's the only thing I want to do. Reading, out the window. I don't want it. Leave me alone. I would say that's the reason I only read 7 books in December, technically 6, but it's not because I got this a week ago. I don't usually take notes during this when I'm reading. I usually just kind of talk about things, which is why I'm so ineloquent when I do these videos. So let's see if I remember what these books are even about and why I liked them or disliked them. The first book that I read was Truly Devious by Maureen Johnson. I did a whole reading vlog about that one. So Truly Devious by Maureen Johnson is a book about a girl who's a teenager. She goes to a high school at a elite academy where people specialize in certain things. She specializes in murder mysteries. And in particular, there's a mystery of the person who created the academy. His wife and daughter go missing. And she's basically trying to solve that while also trying to solve a murder that happens in present time. I thought the book was just okay. Honestly, I thought it was going to be more thrilling just because I've read a lot of Maureen Johnson books and a lot of them typically have a thriller element to them. But this one was just kind of meh. It was just kind of a mystery book. There wasn't much to it other than that, which is okay if you like mystery novels, you know, there's nothing wrong with that. But I am not a huge mystery person just because I don't find it very interesting. I find it really repetitive. This book in particular, the girl really holds your hand when it comes to murder mysteries, and she uses all of her mystery books and Sherlock Holmes to try and explain to you how murder mysteries work, like you haven't watched any TV show about murder before or any movie. I also thought it took a really long time for it to get into the mysteries. It spends most of her time just getting acclimated to the academy. And I know this is a trilogy, so it's not too surprising that it took so long to get things going. But at the same time, when it takes half your book to get to the modern mystery, you're going to lose my interest a little bit. Okay, the next book that I read was The God of the Woods by Liz Moore. This was actually on one of my favorites of the year list. I think it came in like number 10 or something like that. This is a mystery book about a girl who goes missing at a summer camp, but that is special because she is the daughter of the owner of the camp. And it coincides with another child going missing back in this takes place in the 70s. I gotta get my timeline right. Yeah, she goes missing in 1975, and her younger brother, or her older brother, who was younger at the time, actually went missing in the 60s. So this story goes in between those two things, those two missing children, and kind of what happened to both of them. And it also goes back into the 50s when their mother was growing up and kind of why she is the way she is and that kind of thing. And I thought it was really interesting. There was no time period that I wasn't like dreading going back to. It was always something interesting. I was cared about all of the characters, except for the shitty ones. There are a lot of shitty people in this. It talks a lot about family relationships and how the different ways that you're brought up kind of affects you as a person. It's a pretty long book. It's almost 500 pages, but I flew through it. I read it in a couple of days. It was really fast paced and nothing really it doesn't leave anything open at the end. Everything's kind of solved and packed up nicely. And there's a little bit of gay in it, which who doesn't love that? I love when I get surprised by gay things in books. The next book I read was A Study in Drowning, which I have this beautiful edition. I love this cover. I'll probably keep this book just because it's pretty. The story is about a girl who is an architect. She wanted to be in the literature group She wanted to be a literature major in her college, but ended up going into architecture because women are not allowed to go into the literature major. And she ends up being picked out of all of the students to be the person that does the plans for a new building from her favorite author who had recently passed away. And then she finds out that another person is there from the literature group, a boy who is there basically to prove that the author never wrote the books that he got famous for. And it is for her favorite author. And so she's really defensive over that. But the thing about this book for me is that one, she's supposed to be this wonderful architect, and that's why she got picked out of everybody. But there's nothing that actually tells you why she's so wonderful at it. Like she never see her in school very much. She gets angry because this other kid rented out some books from the library that she couldn't get to first, and so she gets pretty mad about that. And I'm like, okay, it's not that serious. And the romance kind of happened pretty quickly for me. Like, she turns on this author so fast. She just needs a cute boy to be like, yeah, I think he didn't do it. I think somebody else wrote it. And she's like, okay. Like, she's mad at him for like a couple of pages, and that's about it. And then she's like, oh, this boy's so hot. Maybe my favorite author is a fraud. I did like the ending. I liked the conclusion of the book and how the kind of mystery element of it and what happened. I got really interested in this book because in the back it says, but if fairies and monsters were real, so were the women who defeated them. And I'm like, oh, that's going to make her seem like such a badass. She's going to be so cool. And she's just kind of there, which, to be fair, that's probably how I would be if I was in this world. But I was just expecting a little bit more from it. Okay, the next book that I read was a graphic novel called Life is Strange, Forget Me Not. This is based off a video game called Life is Strange, True Colors. It's about a girl named Alex who has a superpower where she can sense other people's feelings. Hi, Cooper. Hey, baby. She can sense other people's feelings and even kind of take on those feelings, like either take them away from that person or just feel them alongside them. One of the things about the game is that she is bisexual, and you can choose between either dating the boy in town or dating a girl. And this is what happens if you end up dating the girl and leaving the small town that they were in. They start a band and they start traveling, but the band doesn't really take off. They're playing in really small crowds and it kind of pisses them off. And then they run into this child whose name I can't remember. Lily. And Lily can take people's memories, but she has to live with them after that. And so they are basically going on this quest to try and give everybody back their memories so this girl doesn't have to be burdened with them any longer. It was really short. It was actually the shortest book that I read this year. I was hoping there would be more, especially because I waited like a year for this book to come out. I was so excited about it. I think there was a good lesson in this of not trying to take on everybody's problems and emotions, and you can't really take it all on or else it really brings you down and that kind of thing. I thought that was a really good theme of this book, but it was really rushed. But I'm hoping they come out with another one of these. I don't know if it's a standalone. Like, Life is Strange has all of these other ones down at the bottom that I've read as well. So I'm hoping there's going to be more to this story. I thought it was cute seeing like these two characters kind of as parents for a little bit, just taking care of this like girl and having it thrust upon her. Although it was kind of weird that they just kind of were okay just taking this child around the country and nobody questioned it. They were just like, oh, you're just with this random couple? Okay. The next book I read was Firefly Lane by Kristen Hanna. This is my first Kristen Hanna book. I know a lot of people have read The Nightingale and really liked that book. And this one I read because I watched the TV show because there was nothing else on Netflix. And it was just something that I watched because Sarah Chalke was in it. It's a story about two best friends going from the 70s, I believe, as teenagers up until like the 2010s. And it goes through their ups and downs as friends. And it's really sweet and it will destroy you emotionally. It's a really sad book. It has a really sad ending and it broke me. I honestly, I thought the TV show was sadder because I thought the friendship, like they get into a big fight in the end, towards the end of the book and at the end of the TV show. And it was more understandable to me in the TV show why Kate forgave Tully in the TV show, because I think what she did was less horrible, but I don't understand how she could ever forgive her in this book. Like, I can see why they changed it in the TV show because Tully did something super fucked up. And And I'm like, nope, I would never forgive her for that shit. That friendship is over. um, but yeah, watch out because it will emotionally destroy you. Maybe read the trigger warnings on this one. It's also a pretty long book, but I read it in probably a week. I read the sequel, which we'll get into either. Well, I read it halfway through. I guess I'll get to that one in January. I read that one in December, but finished it in January. So I guess that'll be in my January wrap up. But suffice to say, I did not like it. I really like this one though. I thought it was sweet and sad. The next book I read was Margot's Got Money Troubles by Rufie Thorne. Rufie Thorpe. I know my authors. I don't know my authors. This book is a story about a girl who dates her, starts sleeping with her professor in college, and ends up getting pregnant and keeps the child, and then starts having money issues because he doesn't want anything to do with the child. So she starts an OnlyFans. And I thought this book was really interesting because I thought it would be more about the OnlyFans and the OnlyFans content, which I was kind of afraid of because I don't like sex scenes in stuff. And so I thought this was going to be for lack of a better word, dirtier book. Kind of go over a little bit about the stuff she does in OnlyFans, but it's few and far between. Like it doesn't go into detail. But I really liked how this showed how people treat you differently when they find out you have an OnlyFans, and especially how they treat you differently when you have a child. Even if that child is nowhere involved, because of course they wouldn't be, but even if the child isn't there when you're filming, like people will treat you differently, including your own family. And so I thought this book was really good. It was really interesting to see this kind of perspective because this doesn't really happen in a lot of books. I feel like this is a new kind of story and a new take on this kind of thing. And yeah, the only thing I really had an issue with was her dad was helping her with her OnlyFans, like not filming it while he was there or anything like that, but giving her like ideas and shit. And I thought that was real weird. Like I saw somebody say that it was weird because he was helping her with her taxes, and I'm like, that's fine. You can help her with her taxes, but giving her like ideas on what to do and how to get more content or more fans is a little weird. That weirded me out a little bit. It's an interesting balance between not just as an OnlyFans, but being a single parent and trying to balance a job and trying to balance all of these things. And honestly, this book was stressful. I was really stressed out. I really cared for these characters, and it made it so a lot of the things that she went through was really stressful. Last book that I read was The Berry Pickers by Amanda Peters. This is a story about a Native American family whose job is to pick berries in a field, and they commute between, I don't even remember where they're from, but they drive hours and they stay the summer to pick berries, and then they go back to their other house. When the narrator Joe is a child, his younger sister goes missing. It starts off with him being older and dying from cancer, I believe, and then it goes back to when he's a kid and his sister goes missing, and then him throughout his entire life as he gets married and that kind of thing. And then there's another perspective of Norma, a girl in Maine who is, how do I describe her? She's an only child and she has really protective parents. And you kind of find out what happened kind of immediately because she doesn't have any pictures before a certain age. She has memories of another mother, another family, but they're all dreams. And her family convinces her to write them in a journal and forget about it. And so you kind of see between Norma and Joe the mistakes that they make in their life. It kind of goes through their entire lives. And the regrets that they have, particularly Joe. He has a lot of regrets in his life and kind of where all of those regrets came from. And it talks a lot about how one person's decision can affect a large number of people. Because this family never recovers. Joe's family never recovers really from losing Ruth, his younger sister. His mom never gives up hope that she's out there. And it kind of ruins their lives. I thought it was really good. I loved seeing Norma and Joe grow as people and become better people throughout the years. Okay, I think I also want to talk about, since I already talked about Firefly Lane, I kind of want to talk about Fly Away by Kristen Hanna. this is the sequel to Firefly Lane. I don't want to say too much about what this book is about just because it's a big spoiler for what happens in Firefly Lane. Let's just say that two characters, or I guess three characters, are grieving after something happened in the first book. And I gave this book 2 stars. I was not a huge fan of this one. I think I love a book that has somebody who's grieving. I relate to it a lot. I find it really cathartic to read about. If a character is depressed and a piece of shit, I'm like, hell yes, give it to me. But these characters kind of take it to the next level. They make tons of bad choices, all three of them. They are all fighting with one another. They kind of push everyone away, all three of them. And this shows one kind of grief. Like, this is the kind of grief where you want to be alone, you push people away, you don't take any comfort from anyone else, and you just self-destruct, basically. And I thought that was a strange choice. That was a strange choice to have all three of them act that way, when in actuality, everyone grieves differently. So I thought it was kind of strange. And this book is so depressing. Had everything horrible that could happen to these characters does happen to them. And you get abusive relationships, you get addiction, you get all of these things on top of the grief as well. And they just self-destruct as people. And nothing really brings them back until something horrible happens. I'm like, does anything good happen to these characters? Like, I get that they're grieving, and that's a really hard thing to go through. But 3/4 of the way through the book, you get the backstory on Tully's mom, Cloud, who wasn't really there for her when she was a kid, and she was a drug addict and things like that. But you get the backstory on her. And I was like, this is great. I love learning about her and her story and why she's the way she is. But it's a little too late, because I've just gone through all of this depressing story just to get to your backstory 3/4 of the way through the book. And it just was a little too late for me when it comes to that. Okay, for this month, I'm currently in the middle of 3 books, because of course I am. I'll probably finish this one first just because I got it from the library and it has to go back soon. This is Bright Young Women by Jessica Knoll. This is a story about a real-life serial killer, but his name is never mentioned in this book because they want to give voices to the victims more than the serial killer himself. I don't know if that really gets achieved, because I'm halfway through the book and everybody knows who it is anyway, and he's pretty infamous. This is a fictional book based on a real serial killer. The victims are fictional, and it gives a backstory onto who they are. It gives her a lot of backstory on one of them, actually. She's one of the narrators of this book. And so far, I don't know, I feel kind of weird about this book, weird reading this book, just because it's about a serial killer, but it's also fictionalized. And I get the intention is to give the voices to the victims, but at the same time, you're still highlighting something that was happened to them. And it goes into detail about what happened to these women, and it's pretty brutal. Okay, I'm also finally reading Dogs of Summer. I've been talking about this for like 6 months now and how I was going to read this. I'm finally doing it. I'm about halfway through this book. Yeah, I was reading it. We had a family emergency and had to go to Las Vegas, and I didn't film anything because it was not a fun trip. But I didn't want to bring my library book, so I brought this book, and I finished half of it. It's really gross. Like, these are 2 10-year-old girls, and they have 10-year-old girl humor, and it's very blunt. There's whole paragraphs that are just 2 pages that will be just 1 paragraph, and things are misspelt. It's very sweet because it is about one girl who is in love with another, but doesn't really understand that because she's young. So she thinks that she just wants to be her or be around her all the time. She doesn't really know that she has a crush. But yeah, it's pretty sweet so far. It's really gross though. And then finally, the last book I'm reading is Everyone in My Family Has Killed Someone by Benjamin Stevenson. This is a murder mystery book about a family who has obviously all killed people. And I thought this was going to be more like, oh, they're all serial killers and they're like trying to outdo each other with murder or something like that. But no, some of them accidentally kill people, or like one of them, the doctor, killed somebody on the table during surgery type of thing. And so I really like learning how each person has killed someone or accidentally killed someone or done it on purpose, that kind of thing. But So far, it's pretty interesting. It's about them on a family reunion and someone dies, and they automatically blame the narrator's brother because he has killed someone in the past and went to jail for it. So it's kind of one of those everyone is lying kind of things. But it's really interesting the way that this is narrated. It's very straightforward. It'll tell you like, oh, on page this, and this, there's a dead body. So it's pretty cool. It's a really interesting way to write a murder mystery, I think, and really unique. Yeah, that's it. That's all I got. This video went longer than I thought it would, but I read a lot of books in 2 months. It doesn't seem like that many when you go month by month, but yeah. Thank you so much for watching, and let me know what you're reading down below. Thanks.